Shalom, this is Daniel Stern coming at you from Jerusalem, the city of the great king. And there are 4 things that I want to talk with you about today. One of them will be the promised update on the situation of the Druze in Syria. But let's start with the IAGS, the International Association of Genocide Scholars. The world media, such as and not limited to CNN, BBC, Associated Press, Reuters, and The Guardian, hailed them as the world's leading experts on genocide. And after they voted that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza by a vote of 72% of their 600 members to 28%, this was published as front page news for weeks about how terrible Israel is. Oh no. It was recently discovered that this organization has absolutely no vetting process whatsoever for its members. Nothing is required in order to be a member and participate in the vote. All you need is to pay a $30 fee. That's it. Now, let me just segue to a story from my childhood. My mother, back in the 60s, would tell me about an organization that she joined, the Universal Life Church, which, in order to join the church and become a minister, an official recognized minister, all you needed is that a member of the church would say the magic word, I don't remember what it was, and that's it. You were a minister. Now, growing up, that always fascinated me, and around my 19th year, I and a friend of mine went to their website of the Universal Life Church, and for a fee of $20 became ministers and had the ability to marry people and visit prisoners on death row and so on and so forth. So this recent story is reminding me of that good, fond memory. But as soon as it was discovered, a whole bunch of pro-Israel individuals registered. And then, in response, the organization shut down their registration page and removed the new members. Yet, it's still visible that 13% of, that is 80 of their so-called scholars are Mohammeds from Baghdad, a disproportionate number, I'm sure. Additionally, they have a member called Adolf Hitler. Basically, they're just another sham, anti-Israel, politically motivated, liberal group, but by now, that's to be expected. And the sad part is that the world media is complicit with these lies. I wonder if any of them will show a retraction for the nonsense that they've been printing. I've been saying for ages that these so-called human rights groups are actually terrorist proxies. The only difference between the rest of them and this one is how easy it was to find the proof. Now moving on to the Druze in Syria. Here's an update from a group of army officers, lieutenant colonels, full colonels, and so on, of Druze background, Israeli army officers, that set up a base with other Druze near Akko, and from there they try to get information out from the Syrian Druze to the rest of the world on the situation. And here is their most recent update in 9 points. So, 1. There is a terrible hunger in the Druze region. Jolani's forces, as well as the Bedouin forces, are laying siege to the area. For example, instead of 120 tons of flour, there's only half of that. 2. Only 20% of the needed water is reaching them, and that water is not safe to drink. They claim that the Bedouins and Jolani's forces are slaughtering hundreds of cats and dogs and throwing their corpses into the water reserves to poison the population. 3. The hospitals are fallen under the mass of work and are unable to manage with treating the people that are needed treatment. For example, people are losing limbs because they don't get the surgeries to save them. Diabetics are dying due to a lack of insulin, and people with high blood pressure are dying due to shortages of their medication. 4, there are 220,000 displaced people, that is refugees, in the region. Now, in Israel, we have 80,000 displaced from the north, and that is causing a national upheaval. Imagine how difficult they're doing with a much smaller population than Israel and far less advanced. 5, official numbers claim that 2,000 Druze were murdered, but this group, estimate that it's closer to 10,000, and that the reason that they don't have more accurate numbers is that 38 Druze villages are still under enemy control, and they've lost contact with them. 6, Al-Jolani and the Bedouin forces murdered and raped endlessly. There are hundreds of bodies lying in the streets. 7, there are over 800 kidnapped, of them 120 are women, as well as also children. And the children, we had spoken about these kidnappings of women and children before, but right now there was some footage of children filmed by the Bedouins and the jihadists, saying that these children, whose families were murdered by the jihadists, are going to be their future jihadist soldiers. 7, in just a single hospital, there are 280 bodies of patients and nurses and doctors who were raped and murdered. And last but not least, there is information that the jihadists want to enter Israel with pickup trucks and ATVs and motorcycles, similar to the October 7th massacre by Hamas, and that we in Israel have to be aware and prepared for that. The bottom line is that while the situation there is not good, even though we're not getting constant updates in mass media outlets, the situation is really bad, and if Israel does not open a corridor to the Jabal al-Druze Asveda district, then they will eventually capitulate, and the Sunnis will enter the region, and the slaughter will only get worse. Now let me take a moment and ask you to like and subscribe and share this video. It really helps us a lot, and it's easy and quick for you. Thank you. Let's move on to France for a moment. The United States denied Mahmoud Abbas, that is Abu Mazen, the president of the Palestinian Authority, as well as 80 other Palestinian individuals, entry visas to the United States for the UN General Assembly meeting later this month. Emmanuel Macron, president of France, who along with Saudi Arabia initiated this whole idea of recognizing a Palestinian state at the end of the month, was outraged and claimed that it is unacceptable. In response, Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar posted on X mocking Macron, who is so focused on visas but is ignoring the many problems with the Palestinian Authority, such as the Palestinian education system's incitement to violence against Jews, or the pay-to-slay system in which the Palestinian Authority pays terrorists, families of terrorists, and so on, for the crimes they committed. And the more severe the act of terror, the higher the blood reward, the bounty is paid out. Macron, he says, is trying to intervene as an outsider in a conflict that has nothing to do with him, and he is completely disconnected from the post-October 7th reality and is causing a dangerous destabilization in the region as well as prolonging the war in Gaza. One of Macron's advisors, Jean-Noël Berriot, responded to Gideon Sa'ar, saying that his criticism is unfair and that Macron has secured unprecedented commitments, that the pay-to-slay has ended on October 1st, and a review of the textbooks is underway to prevent incitement, and they will hold the Palestinian Authority to their commitments. Additionally, he claims that France has secured commitments from Arab states and Turkey to disarm and exclude Hamas from any leadership position, as well as create a post-war mission for Gaza and establish normalization with Israel. To this, Guidon Sar responded, saying that the PA has not ended the pay to slay and that the French intelligence knows this very well. The old system was replaced by a new one, but that the same bank accounts of the terrorists and their families are receiving the same funds. They're just receiving it from a different pocket. And either the Palestinian Authority is lying to France or France is lying to the world. Nothing has changed regarding the incitement against the Jews, and it appears everywhere in kindergartens, in schools, and in mosques, except in the letters carefully written from the PA to France. And these letters are very similar to those that Yasser Arafat, the arch-terrorist, was sending 30 years ago to the world. It is no coincidence that Hamas has praised the French for this initiative and everything that they've said about it, because it doesn't hurt them at all. It doesn't disarm them. It doesn't exclude them from control of the Gaza Strip. It doesn't hurt them at all. Now, speaking of lies and misconceptions, let's talk about a common misconception that Israel has to provide hope, a future, jobs, and not antagonize our Palestinian neighbors for there to be peace and quiet in the region. If the Jews go up to the Temple Mount, there will be riots. If the Arabs are not allowed to enter Israel for work, there will be terror. If the army is too active in the refugee camps in Judea and Samaria, there will be violent protests. This has been the narrative that we have been fed since the 90s. That the Oslo Accords and all its concessions were built upon, that they will provide peace and quiet. This has been the narrative pushed on us by all the left, progressive generals and security personnel, the same ones that are currently rioting and protesting against the government, the same ones that take no responsibility for the failures of Israel on October 7th, for their failures. Now, a new report came out that blows this out of the water and shows how wrong and false these lies are. The Regavim organization, which promotes and supports Jewish settlement in the land of Israel, for example in the Negev, as well as in Judea and Samaria, released a graph based on the GSS, the General Security Service, public data, which shows a massive drop in the acts of terror in East Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, starting from the second half of 2023, that is, after October 7th, when Israel started enforcing strict restrictions and heightened IDF operations as well. From 414 acts of terror per year down to 3. That's right, down to 3. The rise started in 2013 from 121 per year up to 2023 up to 414. And now in 2025 it's down to 3. This is despite that no Arabs are allowed into Israel to work, and that the army has been operating massively in the refugee camps. And there are by far more Jews going up to pray in the Temple Mount than ever before. Basically, everything that for 30 years we were told by the George Soros sponsored through the Wexner Fund and so on, security personnel and generals, was false. The problem is that the West is projecting its own desires onto the jihadist Islamics. That all we want is a good life, peace and quiet, to raise our kids, hope a future, a white picket fence, and a dog. But that is not the way the Muslim world works. The religion of peace and brotherhood, as it's called, is intolerant of anyone else, considers any land it ever set its foot on as part of the world caliphate. And within the Quran itself, it is written that it is acceptable to lie and cheat and to make false agreements with the infidels, as Muhammad himself did when he signed false agreements with different tribes, especially the Jews, and then massacred them. We in the West do not understand the mentality of using the democratic country's own laws and courts and systems against it to replace it with Sharia law and to take over. We are stupid, and I hope we will wise up. Now, for now, that is all. I want to remind you to please pray for the soldiers, pray for the hostages, pray for the families of the hostages and the injured, pray for the leadership of Israel, and pray for Netivyah. Thank you so much for your support, and God bless you all. Shalom.